I joined the queue for the lying-in state of the Queen, and I waited for 8 hours. A lot of people thought it was madness, but I just felt it was simply paying respect to another woman, to a very special woman, and also witnessing the end of an era.
Snežana Ćurčić, talking about her affection for both the UK and Serbia. This is Writer's Mosaic, What We Leave, We Carry, the series that tells the true life stories of migration to the UK.
My name is Snežana Ćurčić. I was born in Serbia, in the town about 200 kilometers south of Belgrade. And it's my birthplace is the place that I only visited maybe once in my life, because my dad was a civil engineer and he worked at a hydropower station nearby, and that was the nearest hospital where I was born. And then we came to Belgrade when I was 6 months old. So Belgrade is my hometown, really. I was born in 1958 on the 23rd of December. My name, Snežana, means Snow White. And the reason I was given this name is that my aunt gave me actually the name, because it was like 2 meters of snow, and my skin, my face was as white as snow. To make it even more interesting, my surname, the etymology of my surname, or the root of my surname, means turkey. Turkey as an animal. So I'm called Snow White Turkey. I've been here for 29, nearly 30 years, and people still can't get my name right. And I always say, call me whatever you want to call me, just don't call me names. They call me Ursula, they call me Suzanne, they try to shorten my name. Now I can hear people call me Snazzy, which I understand in English means to be smart or fashionable, or so I like that one. And there was a point a few years into me being here that I thought maybe it's a good idea to change my name, but then I just sort of I thought on an emotional level it was kind of wrong to give away something, to give up something that you are giving at birth. So I've never changed that. My dad's name was Miladin Ćurčić, and my mum's name is Milena Ristović. And then obviously when she got married, she was Milena Ćurčić. And they're from central Serbia. And my dad was a civil engineer, as I said, and he was, he was a lovely, hard-working man. We were very sort of, at that time, if you can call it, kind of middle-class family. My dad was away a lot for his work. He worked around wherever, there was a hydropower station, and he'll come for weekends. But only when he passed away, I understood what a great man he was, and there are lots of things I kind of inherited from him. And my mum was homemaker, and she sort of created this nest. So when I think about home, I think about a nest and coziness and warmth. Or every time I traveled to Belgrade, a few days before, my mum would ask me what kind of food I would like to eat, because she knows it's not kind of food I would eat here. So everything will be ready for me. So it's almost like a feast every time I go there. There'll be Serbian food cooked for days, prepared for days. And also every time I would leave, there would be equal amount of food that I would take here. I have an older sister. She's only about 14 months older than me. And her name is Vesna, which means spring in Russian language, even though she was born in October. But yeah, there you go. At home, it was a cozy, protected atmosphere. But then at the same time, there was this system, the socialist system, Tito's Yugoslavia, which I didn't know what that meant. I was too young to compare it with anything. But the time was very safe. The streets were safe. There was an order of life. There was a sense of equality in the society. Well, in Yugoslavia at the time, everyone would go to skiing every winter, or in summer, everyone would go to summer resorts. But these ski and summer resorts were mainly, they were affordable because they were like a workers' resorts, and they were subsidized, I believe. We had this system that allowed us to have a good, decent and stable life. And also, more importantly, later that I remember as I was getting older, we had this red passport, the Yugoslav red passport, and we always been very grateful to Tito for allowing one of those countries from that part of the world, so-called Eastern Europe, which is a wrong term, but anyway, I'll use it now. That we were the only one who we were allowed and free to travel. So a lot of people used to go to, for example, to Trieste in Italy, on a night train to buy the latest jeans or, a raincoat or, the best or the latest Italian fashion that was coming from there. Italian culture was a big, big thing that we look up to. We didn't care very much about Bulgaria or Romania. They were part of that Iron Curtain. And those countries, from what I understand, they were looking up to us as sort of little America. We were almost like Yugoslavia at the time, was almost like a big room with open doors and windows on each side. We have free access to any part of the world. There's a sense of freedom and comfort. We felt we were free, but of course, as the times went on, we then realized that Tito was probably one of the richest men in the world. He had, in every republic, there were 6 republics at the time, that's Serbia, Montenegro, Macedonia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia and Slovenia, and then 2 autonomous regions within Serbia, that's Kosovo and Vojvodina. So in each of those republics, Tito had a villa. I thought about Britain as an island. An island is something too far away. You have to cross the waters to come to an island. Britain was the Second World War ally, an important one, and Tito had great relations with Churchill, Winston Churchill. So that's what I thought about Britain, but not very much more than that. Beatles, perhaps, maybe, think about Britain, through music. Oh, yeah, of course, they're British, they have the best music. I started learning English relatively late. I think I was 16 perhaps. The main Yugoslav TV station, they used to kind of broadcast and buy these British comedy shows. One of them was Mr. Bean. And also there was this silly man called Benny Hill. Only later I understood the genius of British humour. But I can assure you, Benny Hill was not funny, and that's a kind of silly British humour. Oh my God, the Eurovision Song Contest was a big deal. It was a huge deal. It's still, to this day, it's a big deal, which I don't understand, but it was a celebration. It was a family celebration. It was at the time when there was one TV and we were all gathered together, maybe some neighbours, and it was a feast where we would eat and we would cheer and we would vote. But then That's when I was younger, I remember that. But now I don't get it. When I met my English future husband in 1986, and we met at the last Communist Party conference in Belgrade, and he was a stringer for The Guardian at the time, and I worked for the International Press Centre. I just remember when I saw him, without even knowing his nationality, I just remember him standing at the corner of the bar. That was it. It was an instant attraction, and only later, through a Nigerian, a journalist or a correspondent, that I heard it was him, and that's how we were introduced. And he was based in Vienna, my future husband. That's how everything started, and so went to Vienna, got married, we lived there for a bit. And because he was a war correspondent, basically, he thought, at the time we had children, and then he thought we should move somewhere else, not far away from the Balkans, but still safe. I moved to Vienna in 1987, and then we were there until 1992, and then we moved to Thessaloniki in Greece until 92 till 95, and then came to UK in 95 with an idea to spend 10 months so that my children, who were very young at the time, could hear English and maybe learn English. And I thought, 10 months would be enough for one school year. One school academic year turned into many, many academic school years. It was effortless, more or less, because I was so focused on the children and the family. And also, I was sort of orbiting around Yugoslavia. So I was not far away. And even coming to the UK, I don't think it was difficult because it was only for 10 months. And we didn't know at the time where to settle. So we were younger. We were always on the move. And even when we lived in Vienna, when we lived in Greece, we were always sort of moving around. When I came to England for the first time to meet my husband's family, I was very excited to meet my future in-laws. The second time and after that, there was something that started creeping up. I started to notice things that they were becoming more obvious how different this place was. And I'll give you a few examples. It was, I remember everything had kind of a sense of order. Everything was slow. There were lots of procedures. Even within families, there were sort of procedures how you do certain things. But I remember the first time I came here, I stood at the yellow line at the customs at Heathrow Airport. And I had never seen a yellow line in my life, and I stood there. Then later I saw a yellow line in a bank, and I saw a yellow line in a post office, and then I understood that the yellow line was actually the concept of this country. You know your place and you know your turn, and there is order to things, as opposed to the Balkans in general, where life is more... People kind of improvise life as they make up life as they go. They improvise life as they go. So anytime I would go back to Belgrade, for example, it's that there is a sense of sight of relief. But when I'm in England, even to this day, now I'm more comfortable with that. But with these orders, sort of the first time I came here and then later, when I had to adapt to this kind of life, I always felt like I was in a tight pair of trousers. And you always have to hold your stomach in because you could never breathe properly. You always had to make sure you were doing the things correctly. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but that was the feeling around it. There was another thing that I've noticed, and there was one of the second time I came here when we met friends, and that is that I understood the concept of going Dutch. Going Dutch was a very alien concept to me. And I remember we went for dinner with friends, and then they would spend, it would be a lovely evening. And then the rest of the evening, you would discuss and spend time on working out who has to pay what. I mean, it was truly shocking to see that, how easily you can spoil such a lovely time. Well, I come from a country where money is vulgar, and you don't pretend. You, even if you don't have money, you pretend or you borrow or something. You know, it's almost like it was a vulgar concept. Money doesn't. It's almost like when money is involved in a friendship or in that kind of situation, money can interfere with something much bigger than that. But I love the etymology of it, so I went into learning more about English idioms. You know, like, for example, burning the midnight oil, or once in a blue moon, or maybe when pigs fly. And I always thought there was, these idioms are like a Japanese haiku poems, and I loved it. Even to this day, I read my dictionary, English dictionary, or Serbian as well. I read it as a book. It's the kind of reading you never finish. There is no beginning, there is no end, and you can just go for one page and sort of you lose yourself in it. Another thing that struck me when I came to England was the architecture. And I always wondered, it was beautiful, it was orderly. You know, I talk about the order in England. There is a visual order. You have this sort of row of lovely, beautiful, flowery little houses. And I remembered that sense of order there as well. And then I also wondered the height of the buildings. I always thought why they were so short. You know, I come from a place where you have these skyscrapers, and only, in central London maybe you will find them. Now sort of things are changing. When I left Belgrade, I brought a lot of things with me to remind me of home, and I think I have a few still left here with me. For example, one of these items, there was almost like a symbolic of your life, was a coffee grinder. I still have it here. And it's an old-fashioned coffee grinder. You know, I think it's a kind of Ottoman, because, Serbia or the Balkans was 5 centuries under the Ottoman Empire. So there are lots of symbols of that time. And one of them is just a modest coffee grinder. It's a long one. It's like made of copper. It's a manual one, and you put coffee on top of it. There's a little kind of container on top of it, and then you grind it. And then at the bottom of the grinder, there's like a container that will collect that coffee. And it's always that sense of freshly ground coffee. And so we drink Turkish coffee, or we call it Serbian coffee, or Bosnian, whatever you call it. Everyone thinks it's their own sort of invention. I can't remember the last time I used it, but I just can't get rid of it. But then at the times when I used it, when I was here, at the beginning, it was not only the grinder, the physical grinder, but it was also the smell that would immediately take me home, take me to my roots, to my source, to my beginnings. That's how I remember home. It was Mum always drink coffee. And also when I talk about coffee grinders, I can tell you the story when I lived in Vienna. And I was working with the Swedish cultural attaché in Vienna at the time, and we worked as volunteers for Bosnian refugees. And our job was to go there and organize different kind of events, and we would take their children, older children, to museums or sort of sports event or anything similar. And I remember the first time I went to the place where they lived, it was like a sports center, and then inside the beds were divided with sort of sheets and curtains. But I remember a few of these Bosnian women they all had a coffee grinder. And particularly, Bosnia is particularly famous for these grinders, coffee grinders and coffee as well. These people left their homes in a hurry with very, very little possession, and then yet they managed to grab a coffee grinder. So when I came here, it was quite easy because then it was my husband's family. They were here, and that was really the key reason why I felt at home here. I mainly met and made friends with foreigners. It's almost like you were speaking the same language. And as the time went by, then I understood we were staying a bit longer and longer and longer. Meeting foreigners, now thinking about it, I think it was mainly you sort of understood each other without saying a word. I think with English people, it was more difficult. I think approaching an English person or becoming friends with the English person, there was in some ways a hard nut to crack. They were not that approachable. But then I realized it took me longer with them. Also, speaking English was easier with foreigners. It took me a long time to understand English people. It was just too clean and more difficult to understand it. I could always understand a foreigner as much as they could understand me. I think the first time I felt I was here for a longer haul was around 2000 when I applied for British citizenship. At that time, receiving a UK citizenship was a quite big deal for me. And I think that was the moment I thought, right, okay, the citizenship is telling me something, is defining me as someone who really belongs here. And I still remember when I I was invited to go to a small, modest Brighton solicitor's office to make an oath. And I still remember that as it was yesterday. It was 24 years ago. And the solicitor gave me two options, and I was not prepared for this, so I had to think very, very fast on my feet. So the first option was it's a sort of civil version of oath. So it will be something like, I'll give my loyalty to the United Kingdom, I will uphold its democratic values, and so on and so forth. And then he told me in the same breath, the second option, which went like, I do solemnly and truly declare and affirm on becoming a British citizen, I will be faithful, bear true allegiance to Her Majesty, the Queen Elizabeth, her heirs, successors, according to law. And I was confused, but it was literally a moment, a few seconds, where I had to tell the solicitor which way I want to go with this oath. And then I just thought, the second option with the Queen and with, being her subject, it was too exotic to miss. So that's the one I went for. And then many years later, actually 2 years ago when the Queen died, I joined the queue for the lying in state of the Queen. And I waited for 8 hours. A lot of people thought it was madness, but I just felt, not that I'm a royalist, far from it. I have nothing to do with monarchy and, or any feelings of that sort. But it was simply the paying respect to another woman, to very special woman, and also to kind of witnessing the end of an era. So I was happy to wait for probably over 8 hours, well into the night. And I remember, coming home, I was physically quite totally drained, but I was glad I did it. Being in the queue for the lying in state of the Queen very much reminded me of the time when Tito died. And he died in 1980, and I was in high school, and I remember we were doing exactly the same thing. We were in the queue. Actually, we were queuing all the way in the park. It was a long queue overnight, and it was a similar feeling around saying goodbye to someone who was part of your journey without even understanding it. And but the queues are very different. The queues are and were very different. You know, when I waited in London here for the Queen, I remember we had like a little number, and you were numbered. You know, no one could jump in, or there was an order to things, and it was incredibly organised. And you can only imagine what happened in Belgrade. You know, it was quite chaotic, and there was an order between us, but it was a different kind of feeling of less order, but equally sad in a way. It's almost like your grandfather or grandmother died. Every time I went home, I started to feel that kind of difference. Almost people felt, now I understand that if anyone would mention Britain in any wrong or bad light, which a lot of people around the world feel, and I experience that there are lots of people who don't like Britain for, I guess, historical and political reasons. I always used to defend Britain, very much so, very, very, very defend this country. But also now I don't even go to any arguments. I just say that I'm not the kind of audience for that kind of conversation, because it's simply, you know, I live here and I'm not interested. So I feel very emotional about Britain and very, very protective. I think I'm a great Serbian Belgrade ambassador. I always try to greet people through food, through feeling comfortable at my home. I would always bring food from Serbia. So I told you my parents used to prepare food for days and days for me to take. And they always had loads of plastic bags and lots of sellotape, making sure that nothing leaks or nothing smells, because, you know, God forbid, when you go to these, when you cross the border at the airport, they can smell anything. So you have to be very, very careful. So I would bring food from there, particularly coffee. Coffee is something that I always bring, even to this day. And also chili pepper. It's a very special one from the south of Serbia. Living in this country has been a great experience. I've never ever experienced any discrimination, any uncomfort of any kind, of being, I'm white, privileged in many ways. But I've never experienced anything into your face. And I think English people are very good at not expressing anything into your face, which I'm very grateful for. Whatever they think about you, about your accent, about your name, you know, particularly about my name, it was never, I've never experienced it in a way that some people may experience. I still can't believe I'm here. I more of my life I've been abroad than in Serbia, in Belgrade. And that's a strange notion. And I think it really comes back to your attitude. And that is, I'm very tall, so I have that air of authority. And that's how I walk. And I think that it's almost like, you know, when you're tall, people don't really come to you that easily. You know, there's a sense of maybe even some kind of threat, even though I'm the nicest person you can imagine. But I think it's to do with my attitude. And I've always been quite confident person anyway. I've never ever thought about going to Serbia. It's a country where I love going back. I mean, it's my homeland, and I have my room there. I have my family there, of course. But I don't think I'll be able to live there now. I think it's the place that I love to visit. I love to get that first whiff of the place, of that genuine warmth. But after a while, it's like, you want to go, you want to leave. Was it a good idea to come to Britain? First of all, I have no idea. But more importantly, I think it was meant to happen, and I'm very, very grateful for Britain, because Britain has made me who I am today.